Good day everyone, I am Rachel Bita Ruha and I will be the first to report our topic entitled Implementation of Curriculum, Challenges and Best Practices. Before we proceed to the challenges, let me first explain what curriculum implementation means. When we talk about curriculum implementation, we are talking about the process of putting the curriculum into actual practice. In simple words, it is when the things written in curriculum guides, policies, and learning standards are actually applied by the teachers in the classroom. For example, a curriculum may tell teachers what learners should learn and what competences they should develop. But the important question is, how will the teacher actually teach this in the classroom? So a curriculum can be well designed and can have clear learning objectives, but does not automatically mean that it will be successful. Its success also depends on what happens in the actual classroom. So teachers have different teaching experiences. Learners have different needs and abilities, and schools have different resources and situations. Because of these differences, implementing a curriculum can sometimes be challenging. So, curriculum implementation is not simply about following what is written in the curriculum. It is about making sure that intended learning becomes a meaningful learning and experiences for students while considering the real situation of teachers, learners, schools, and communities. So, this brings us to an important question. Is a curriculum successful because it is well designed or because it works well in the actual realities of learners, teachers, schools, and communities? And this question leads us to the main focus of our discussion. For the first part of our report, I will be discuss the part 1, which is the challenges of curriculum implementation, where we will look at the different difficulties that may affect the successful implementation of a curriculum. So, there are 5 major challenges that we will discuss. So, first, the gap between the intended curriculum and the implemented curriculum. One of the most significant challenges is the difference between what policymakers intend and what teachers are actually able to implement. The intended curriculum represents what education authorities expect learners to learn. Next, the implemented curriculum represents what teachers actually teach. Next, the attained curriculum represents what learners actually understand and are able to demonstrate. So these three are not always the same. For example, a curriculum may require learners to demonstrate critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, and problem solving. However, if classroom conditions encourage teachers to focus mainly on completing competencies and preparing learners for assessments, the actual learning experience may become more focused on content coverage than deep understanding. So, in key insight, curriculum implementation is successful not when everything is covered, but when the intended learning actually reaches the learner. Second, teacher preparedness and capacity. Teachers are the primary curriculum implementers. Even an excellent curriculum can fail when teachers lack of sufficient preparation, pedagogical knowledge, instructional resources, or opportunities for professional development. So teachers need to understand not only what they are expected to teach, but also why it should be taught, how it should be taught, how learners learn it best, how learning should be assessed, and how instruction can be adapted to learner differences. Giving teachers a curriculum document is not the same as preparing teachers to implement the curriculum. Third, limited resources. A curriculum implementation is affected by the availability of textbooks, learning materials, technology, classrooms, laboratory equipment, internet connectivity, instructional tools, and financial resources. So, there is sometimes an assumption that every school has the same capacity to implement a curriculum. In reality, schools operate under different conditions. A strategy that works in a well-resourced school may not immediately work in a school with limited facilities. So, key principle, curriculum implementation must consider context. Fourth, learner diversity. So classrooms are not composed of identical learners. Learners differ in learning pace, prior knowledge, language, interest, abilities, socioeconomic background, motivation, and learning needs. A curriculum that is implemented exactly the same way for every learner may unintentionally leave some learners behind. Therefore, curriculum implementation requires differentiation and flexibility. So the learning goal may remain consistent while the pathway toward the goal may vary. Next, the last one, number 5, curriculum overload. Another challenge is the amount of content, competencies, activities, assessments, and administrative requirements placed upon teachers and learners. When too much content must be covered within limited instructional time, teachers may experience curriculum congestion. The danger in that teaching becomes a race to finish competencies rather than opportunity to achieve mastery. So coverage becomes more important than comprehension. So that concludes part 1, which focus on the challenges of curriculum implementation. Now, I would like to turn over the discussion to our next reporter for part 2.
Good morning, everyone. I am Angelique Pivallaro, the second reporter about the best practices in curriculum implementation. Now, today, we will learn about the best practices in curriculum implementation. So, we have here number 1, which is the contextualization. Now, what is contextualization? Now, contextualization is one of the strongest practices in curriculum implementation and is contextualization. Now, teachers connect curriculum contents to learners' experiences, local cultures, and communication situations. Now, local environment, current issues, and real-life problems. Now, for example, mathematics use market situations and teach decimals, fractions, and percentage. Now, science can use the community's environment. How? To discuss ecosystem and environmental concerns. Now, in English and Filipino activities, we can use authentic community situations as context for communication. Now, contextualization answers the question. Now, here you go the question. Why should learners care about what they are learning? Now, second is the learning-centered implementation or learner-centered implementation. Now, this is the one that we can move beyond our idea that is teachers simply transmitted of information. Now, learners should be given opportunities to investigate, ask questions, collaborate, solve problems, create, communicate, and reflect. Okay? Now, the teacher becomes a facilitator of learning. This doesn't mean that the teacher becomes less important. Now, listen. Effective learner-centered teaching, it requires highly skilled teachers who know when to explain, when to question, and when to guide. Not just that, but also when to allow learners to discover. Now, let's move forward with number 3, which is assessment for learning. Now, assessment should not only determine whether learning happened. It should help create a learning. Now, teachers use questioning, observation, exit tickets, performance tasks, peer assessment, self-assessment, and feedback. Now, the important question changes from what score did the learners get to what does the learner understand? What does the learner still need? And what should I do next as a teacher? Okay. Now, assessment therefore becomes part of the curriculum implementation rather than something that happens only after the instruction. Okay, the fourth one is the collaborative professional learning. Now, teachers should not implement curriculum reforms in isolation. Schools can establish professional learning communities where teachers share strategies, examine learners' output, discuss challenges, develop instructional materials, and observe one another. It also reflects on teaching practices. Now, collaboration makes curriculum implementation on more sustainable. Why? Because teachers learn from the actual experiences. Now we have here number 5, which is the school leadership support. Now, curriculum implementation is also a leadership issue. School leaders influence implementation through instructional supervision, professional development, resource allocation, mentoring. We also have feedback and creative support, school culture. This time, let's have effective leaders do not simply ask, have you completed the curriculum? They also ask this. Okay, are learners actually learning? Now, monitoring curriculum implementation should focus not only in the compliance, but they also need to see the quality and the learner outcome. So that ends with my report today. Thank you so much for listening. Bye!
Once again, good day everyone. This is Sir Jeff and I am assigned to give the outro of our report, which is the challenges and the best practices of the implementation of curriculum. So I will be giving you the perspective at the same time, the turning point from having challenges up to having best practices. So dili lang kay problema lang gipukusan but also the solution or ang kalahian sa karaan nga implementation o karon nga bag-o nga implementation. So we have here the shifting perspective. So kaniadto ang old lens is for compliance, one size fits all, teacher as implementer, coverage as success. So sa una kung covered nimo ang nakasuwat sa curriculum, so okay na to because for compliance, no? Mo na gisukod sa unang panahon. But now curriculum implementation is meaningful and responsive. It is flexible to context and at the same time, teacher as curriculum maker. So, from the previous discussion nato katong kinaunahan pa jud katong curriculum design, nakita nato nga mas nindot kung ang kung ang mga teachers are involved sa curriculum making. So, sa una, coverage is success, karon is learning as success. Dili na magmatter kung na word for word ba dyan nimo pagka implement ang or pagkasunod ang curriculum but kung naabay nagatuna ng mga learners. So mo na ang bag-o nga lens karon. And let us remember that curriculum implementation is also a dynamic cycle. So we have here the graph or the cycle from the curriculum as the starting point and then up to the adaptation. So let us discuss this one by one. The curriculum itself is the starting point, okay? The prescribed curriculum, the learning competencies, the standards, the content, the intended learning outcomes, it provides the direction. So, ana magsugod tanan. Si teacher, the Department of Education, as well as the other institutions, ana magsugod jud tanan sa curriculum. Without the curriculum, malabo nga maka-come up ta og nindot nga success for the learning or continuity sa learning. So, it provides the direction for teaching and learning. Next is the teacher implementation. Teachers interpret the curriculum based on learners' needs. So, learners' abilities. Magbase, dili kay kung unsa ang nakasuwat sa curriculum, mao na jud na ang sundon ni teacher. Mao na ang kinaraan. Karon nga bag-o nga perspective nato, karon nga bag-o nga curriculum implementation, si teacher mo interpret sa curriculum depende sa unsay panginahanglan sa iyang mga bata kay dili bayatan ng bata parehang panginahanglan. Okay? And then unsay available nga resources. For example karon sa grade 6 na ay competencies sa APP nga ICT nga it's all about coding. So, coding and animation, but ang available nga resources is only one, okay? Laptop, usara, kanang nasa teacher, sa advisor. So, how can we come up with a meaningful lesson or performance task nga ultimo resources wala man? So, the teacher need to find or need to interpret the curriculum depende kung unsay available nga resources. Classroom realities, okay? Kinahanglang ato pong i-consider ang classroom. Ang uban ng mga classroom ni wala internet connection. Walay conducive space for learning or wala gani television or walay sa panadiha, way kuryente na uban mga way kuryente especially sa mga remote nga areas. So the teacher should interpret curriculum based also on that. And we have the community context, the time, the teaching strategies, and then professional judgment. So, kibali, na duha ka teacher, parehas silang curriculum nga girawat, but different ang ilahang pag-implement. Ganuman, lahi-lahi sila estudyante. Mag-agad ta. Ang atong interpretation, mga teachers, is mag-agad ta kung unsay panginahanglan sa atong learners, especially sa developmental needs. We have also the classroom experience. After the teacher's interpretation, it becomes the actual learning experiences through teaching strategies, to activities, through discussion or group works or classroom interaction or real-life application. So this is where the intended curriculum becomes the implemented curriculum. And then we have also the learner's response. The learner's response during the implementation, the learner's response through participation, understanding, performance, questions, misconceptions, engagement, motivation, even lack of interest mo na ilahang i-respond. And then, learners are not passive recipients. Their responses provides evidence about whether the curriculum and teaching approaches are working. And then we have also the assessment. After the learner's response or sa ilahang nakatunan, we teachers need to have an assessment. It provides evidence of learning and asks whether the learners achieve the intended outcomes. Our intentions is for the learners to learn. At the same time, atong hibawan kung unsa ang mga outcomes. So, how to do that? We have to have an assessment. Okay? It's either from the written assessment or performance task. So, it includes performance tasks, quizzes, projects, observations, portfolios, recitations, and so many kinds of assessment. Basta lang kay mosibo pod sa imuha nga take up ng mga lessons, dili ta magsibag-sibag. Okay? Although we can give challenges sometimes. So, assessment should produce information that guides to the next instructional decision. And then we have the reflection. So, the teacher would probably ask unsay ninggana or unsay wala ninggana nga mga strategies or unsa kaha ang outcomes nga wala atong gi-expect pero wala natuman. So, ngano kaha? So, maghimo ta reflection. Sa tanan na itong na-take up nga lessons or within the end of the day, mag-reflect ta. That's why sa lesson planning, na diha sa kinalasan ay reflection. Pila ka bata ang nakapasar sa assessment, pila ka ang bata ang in need o remediation. So, appeal na. And then we have also the adaptation. So based on the assessment and reflection, ang teachers mo dyan itong trabaho perme, no? Hago hunahunaon. After sa assessment, after sa reflection, kinahanglan nga mag-modify ta sa atong mga activities. Unsa ka mga strategies nga dili kayo effective. So ato nang i-change. So mangita na po taglain nga strategies or atong i-adjust ang pacing nato. Basin og ang mga bata is medyo critical ra kayo gatong nahatag or ang uban medyo sayon ra pod. So atong alisdan ang ato ang pacing. And then we have to contextualize examples. We will use localized materials para mas masabta nila in real life, and then provide, syempre, always provide remediation or atong i-enrich atong mga activities or i-restructure na to ang atong assessment kay basig lisod ra gilisuran ra ang uban ay uban sayunan ra pipila ra ka buok pero ang kasagaran is gilisuran, so ato nang i-restruct. That is the meaning of adaptation. So atong i-adapt kung unsa ang mga changes nga necessary natong buhaton or unsa atong i-retain or unsa atong mas palamian pag yun nga way or strategies para mas maka-learn ang mga bata. Gikan sa curriculum, nagsugo sa curriculum, mo-end gihapon ta sa curriculum, unsay pwede idugang para sa sunod, unsay mga improvement or development nga pwede buhaton, unsay mga competencies nga dapat kuhaon para sa sunod na pod nga teacher's interpretation, tuyo ko dynamic cycle. Walay kahumanan nga cycle. That's why dili na tinga nga 2 to 3 years from now mag-usab na pud tag curriculum. So tungod na sa development or tungod na sa changes or tungod sa response sa mga teachers ug nato nga mga learners. So in the end, okay? So the real challenge is translating intentions into meaningful learning. So, strong implementation is contextualized, learner-centered, collaborative, flexible, and focused on learning. Abi ninyo sa pagkatinuod lang, basta magbago na ganing curriculum, kasagarang reaction sa mga teachers is reklamo gyud, tanapod, bago na pong gamunon. So, now, usap po ning reklamo na sa una. Pero now, mas tungod ani nga ato ang mga discussions, usas mo mga realizations nga dapat mo adjust data mga teachers kay mo ni iron. Naisgutan na to nga kung ang curriculum implementation is a dynamic cycle, therefore moabot gyud ang panahon sa pagkahinog ani nga curriculum nga doon na joy mga setbacks, doon na mga gaps, na mga loopholes nga dapat i-fill up. So that's why mag-change na pod, no? So, ato na lang yung dawaton because this is part of our journey. So, I guess that would be all, and thank you so much for listening to our reports from the previous reporters and from my group mates. Thank you so much and good day everyone.